So the presentation that we're about to hear from NHC is something that during and after the last meeting, we heard a lot of interest from this group in learning more about the hydraulic model. And so in the interest of shared learning and all of us at the table being able to learn more about that, we had asked NHC staff to come to me today and present. So the presentation will be about 15 to 20 minutes, and we'll have plenty of time for question and answer afterward. So I won't ask you to please hold questions until the end. And Chris can get through all the slides before we get to questions, unless you have a simple clarifying question. But there will be plenty of time for questions later. So you know, PCC Farmland Trust is filming the presentation today, so people who weren't able to attend can see it. And I'll just clarify that farming the floodplain project is related to the proposed levee project, which is the subject of the model, but is separate. So the project that is being modeled is not the project of the farming of the floodplain project. So I just wanted to be clear about that. And with that, I will turn it over to Chris.
Jordan, thank you for the invitation to come present. I'm going to talk to you about work that we did at Pierce County's request about, well, we finished it about a year ago. So we started on this in 2014 and it carried over to the first part of 2015. And so the presentation, I may take as much as 25 minutes. I think Spencer just tried to trim me to 15 or 20. So let me know if we're going a little too long. There's only about 15 or 16 slides, so there really aren't that many. Like Spencer said, if we can hold the questions till the end, then I'm happy to field as many questions as I can. So I just want to talk a little bit about the objective of the project, maybe not specifically what we did in NHC, but even a little bit broader with the Clear Creek Levee Floodplain project. Talk to you a little bit about hydraulic models, general use of hydraulic models. I don't know how many people here are familiar with them, so I'll just take a 30,000 foot look at it. Then talk about specifically the model that we put together for the Clear Creek, the alternatives that we investigated, and then I have about maybe 4 slides on the results. And then we just started some discussions about future work for Pierce County here, so we can kind of tell you what we're starting off to think about, but I understand that's going to be a topic for later on in the meeting too, so I expect that work and even that slide are going to evolve. Okay, so my name is Chris Long. I've been with NHC for 14 years. I work in one-dimensional and two-dimensional hydraulic modeling and some hydraulic design. And Sam, been in NHC almost 10 years. Does similar work, but he does a little more of hydrologic modeling. So, rainfall simulation modeling as opposed to routing, what I think of as hydraulic modeling and computer programming. Okay, so like I said, the overall project objectives for the Clear Creek Floodplain Reconnection Project have to do with these 4 bullet points here. Reducing of risk of floods, benefits to the ecosystem, specifically to salmon, and then there's the agriculture, making sure this is done in a way that's viable with the agriculture, and I understood that that's even a topic to be discussed later on, what exactly that means. But that's the big picture of what this project is about. Go ahead, Sam. Our role in this, that we worked on before, was to investigate specifically the impacts that would happen on flooding. And this was done, again, at the beginning of this, as the project is being conceived. So I would say that it was a feasibility level study that we did. And it's important to note that what we did was concentrated more on large flooding than average flooding conditions. And I'll explain to you why that is as we get into the model. And so the details, when you're getting down into the ditches and the drainage within individual fields, that's not reflected in the work that we did. And again, it has to do with the fact of where we started with the work, and it was still in initial stages of this. Okay, so the important thing to know is that models are, they're a tool that you can use to query, to investigate, right? So that you can be efficient with your funds, having a pretty good idea of what to expect when you put the shovel in the ground and build something. So they're really an investigative tool that we use to evaluate hydraulics. And specifically ways that there are different sorts of models. In the case of the Clear Creek floodplain, we built a computer model, right? So we did computer simulations of what we're to expect. You can also build physical scaled models, a 1 to 100 scale, a 1 to 20 scale model. The same concept exists where you have a replica of a prototype that you are able to kind of get in there and tweak and turn, either physically, a physical model, or the dials on your computer to investigate what sort of an outcome you can expect when you make changes to a system. And generally the way that computer modeling works, and even physical modeling, is you start with a baseline condition. So you use your suite of information to build a baseline of what you think today's conditions represent. You calibrate your baseline conditions to any observations that you have, be it water surface elevations or velocities or whatever it is you have in your system. So you try and turn the dials to make sure that you're replicating as best you can what's out there today, and then you can push the buttons on the model in different ways and see what the outcome is, so that you have an idea of what to expect when you make changes. So that's kind of the process that we went through with this Clear Creek series of models, actually. And so that's why I'm saying here model. What we built was actually a series of models, coupled hydrologic and hydraulic models. We started with a series of models that we put together in the early 2000s for FEMA, and FIS is a flood insurance study. So we built a flood insurance study of Clear Creek and other tribs that drain to the area for FEMA in order to establish floodplains in the early 2000s. So we used that model as the kernel for the work that we carry forward. And like I say, it's a series of coupled hydrologic and hydraulic models. What do I mean by that? The hydrologic models are models where we're simulating the rainfall and the runoff on the different watersheds that drain to the area. And then we have hydraulic models that are routing that rainfall, that water that gets on the ground, either on the surface or just below the surface, routes that water throughout the system, wherever it may be. So in this case, into the floodplain and then out into the river as dictated by the tides, the flow coming down the Puyallup, whatever the gate settings are. So it's a series of models that are coupled together. The hydrologic model that is sending up, that is creating all the water that's being routed, it's actually simulating conditions in the watershed, in the basin, on a 1-hour time step. And it begins in 1961. So what we have is a continuous simulation. Every hour, we know, in this particular case, the water surface elevation in Clear Creek, from 1961 until whenever we stopped. I think it was 2012. Yeah. So on every hour, from 1961 to 2012, what is that? 50 years about. We have the statistics of what's going on there in the floodplain. And so what we do is we run those statistics on the results and are able then to report what's expected, what has happened in the past and what's expected to happen in the future when you change the conditions. So the updates that we built to the flood insurance study, these are the changes that we made to that kernel that I said. We extended the precipitation and the tide records in commencement Bay through 2012 Obviously, when we did that for FEMA in the early 2000s, it ended, 10 plus years earlier. We changed the curves in the model that describe how much storage, how much volume is available for the water to occupy in the Clear Creek floodplain. When we did that work in the early 2000s, it was based on some photogrammetry techniques that collected the topography in 1998. So when we did this last year, we were able to use a 2010 data set of LiDAR that the county had flown. And then we modified the gate operations a little bit. We found a hiccup, if you will. So we adjusted that based on the gate operations. So this shows you the extent, or the geographic area that's encompassed by the coupled hydrologic and hydraulic models. So the colored polygons running north-south, those are the watersheds, or the tributaries labeled there. We have, in the model, we have rainfall that is raining on the basin, the evaporation that's happening. The model knows what all land use and soils are within the watershed. And on a 1 hour time step, it is accumulating water as computed, and then routing it downstream, and eventually routing it down into the valley there. Also, the Puyallup River is an input to the model, right? So the river has a varying flow, and different flows have different water surface elevations, or what we call a stage. So the Puyallup River stage is an input to the model. The outlet structure, what's going on at the gates, depending on the rules, are an input, and then obviously the stage, the tides play a role. And so this is just a little bit closer look at where the model is resolving its solution. So again, you have inputs from the 4 tribs. You have the Puyallup River, you have your gates, and you have the tide. And they're all coming together to work to tell a story of what's happening in the valley. This is conceptually how the model is routing flows, what's happening. So on the left, you have the 4 tributaries: Canyon, Squally, Swan, and Clear Creeks. You have rain that's falling on those basins and evaporation that's happening, and that water is accumulating and then routing north, going downstream, and it flows down into the floodplain. You have obviously the precipitation and evaporation that's happening there on the valley floor itself, and that's accumulating some volume of water, and that volume of water is reaching different water surface elevations or stages. And then those stages there in the floodplain are coming against the stages in the Puyallup River, and you have the outlet gates there, and they have different rules on how those are operated, and depending on the stage of the Clear Creek floodplain, the stage of the Puyallup, and the gates, that tells how which direction the water is going. And all this again is happening on this 1 hour time step. These solutions are being recorded. Okay, so we had this initial flood insurance study. We updated it with recent another 10 plus years of data, and now we got to the point where we wanted to push some buttons in the model and see how does it respond. So we made modifications to the available storage, and we looked at it in 3 different ways. We looked at what's available now, the current storage that's out there today, the available storage in the floodplain, as if you were to put a ring levee with its footprint delineated roughly along the 14-foot contour, and then similarly for the 18-foot contour. And I highlighted in there they're preliminary because, well, they are. Helmut would tell me, would counsel me, we're just looking at, again, the feasibility of this, so don't get caught up in exactly where that footprint is now. From my perspective, the footprint is just kind of helping me understand the storage, the available volume that I have. but it's far from being that's where the levee would be. So we had two modifications to the available storage, those shown there. Sam. And then we had three modifications to the outlet structure. So the first option, there are existing culverts, right? There are two culverts that are gated in different ways at the outlet. So option one was to leave those alone, no change. Option two was to leave the culverts in place, but pull all of the control operations so that they're just uncontrolled, open box culverts. Option three was to leave, was to block one. Is that right, Sam? To block one culvert and leave the slide gate operations on the other? All right, so in this third option, there's only one culvert that's actually allowing water to flow in and out, and it has the slide gate rules. And then the last option was a clear span bridge over the entrance. So we had three floodplain storage alternatives, 4 outlet configurations, and you kind of bring those together, form a little table, and really we have 12 different conditions that we were looking to evaluate, right? So, no levee, existing floodplain storage with an open bridge. What does that look like? All right, well, let's put this levee in at the 14-foot contour again, this open bridge concept. What does the solution look like? And so you bring that together, there are kind of 12 different stories to be told that you can then compare against one another to see what's the impact. Okay, so like I said, the way that we quantify the impacts, how we summarize the result, it's all based on statistics. And it has to do with curves, and we fit lines through the curves and then are able to have common points between the curves that we compare against one another. What's shown right here is what's called the stage frequency curve. What this is actually showing, and I don't want to get lost in this because I take this and I summarize it in a later slide, but just so that I'm clear, what this is summarizing here is on the left side, this vertical axis, you have the stage or the water surface elevation, and it's in units of feet, right? So the water here is 12 feet high, 14 feet high, 16 feet high, and on this axis here you have a percent chance that a water surface elevation is exceeded. And the numbers that most of you may be familiar with are the ones that are here up at the top, right? This 2, 5, 10, 2,500. Those are what are referred to as the 5-year stage, right? Or the 100-year stage. So what you see is that the 100-year stage, this value that's up here, is the highest water surface elevation. It's 20 plus feet is the 100-year stage, and so on. And so what we do is we find common points among these curves, and then we can compare them against one another. I guess something else I'll just point out while we're here. What this curve represents, these points, those points are the highest water surface elevation achieved in any one water year. So I said we ran this from 1961 until 2012. So whatever that is, 50 plus years, you're going to see 50 plus points there. Each one of those representing the highest stage that was achieved in the floodplain for that water year. And so it's interesting to note here at the top, the 4 highest floods, I have them called out there. These are probably events that people have a recollection of. January 8, 2009, February 8th and 9th, 96, January 90, November 86. Again, each one of these is a particular event, a historical event. So the other plot that I have here, I'm going to explain this in a little less detail. This is a stage duration plot. This just speaks to, on an average year, how long period of time an expected stage is expected to occur. So on an average year, the water surface elevation is expected to reach a certain water level for X amount of time. What is that time? And so you can compare these alternatives, right? Alternative A, the alternative B, the alternative C, is how long different elevations are expected to last, depending on the conditions you're looking at. Okay, so I think I have 1, 2, 3, I think I have 3 more slides. No, 4. 4 more slides. This chart here was Sam's and my attempt to explain some of the results without getting lost in the numbers. What this is showing, let's just look at these two bars right here under existing outlet. What we're graphing here are the existing, the storage, the volume available in the existing floodplain versus the volume available as if a ring levee were built at the 18-foot contour. And so with the existing outlet, no change to the outlet structure itself, the value of the 10-year stage, right, that's the stage that has a 1 in 10 chance of happening in any calendar year, is virtually unchanged. Right? So the 10-year stage for the existing outlet, no change to the outlet, no change to the available storage is here, and if you were to put a ring levee at the 18-foot level, this 10-year stage is right here. There's virtually no change. 50-year level, there's no change. 100-year level, there's virtually no change. So, and you can see that by and large those bars are similar across. Whatever the outlet configuration is, there's hardly any change in the statistics of what water level is achieved per however you manage the case. And so what that's telling you is there's not a lot of difference in the volume available between what's out there now and as if a ring levee were built at the 18-foot contour. And again, these are statistics that are geared towards the higher state, the higher floods, right? This isn't speaking real. This model isn't geared to speak really well to those more frequent events, but certainly at these higher events, we're seeing no change. However, go ahead. Where you do see a difference here is from outlet structure to outlet structure. So if I just look at, as if the outlet structure is how it operates today versus this condition here, 2 open culverts. Right? So this is the same 2 culverts that are there now. So if you pull out all the control structure, the gates, the flat gates, the slide gate, just leave them open. What you see is that the 10-year stage is going to increase by almost 2 feet. Right? But the 100-year stage, I don't know, it increases by 4/10 of a foot. What this is saying is that this outlet structure is having more of an influence on the more frequent events. Right? So this 10-year stage, you're really seeing a difference between how the gates operate today and how they could operate if this were done. But as you get to the floods that are 1 in 100 chance of happening in any given year, the influence of the outlet structures is diminished. You're seeing more impact from that at the more frequent events. Okay, now this slide, we changed up here at the top. Now we're comparing the existing volume, the available storage that's there now, as if a ring as if a ring levee were built at the 14-foot contour, right? So that means this ring levee, this new volume at the 14-foot contour, is smaller. It's not as big as one built at the 18-foot contour. It's a smaller levee, less volume available. You can go ahead, Sam. And now you do see a difference within each individual outlet structure. So now, previously, we didn't see a whole lot of difference between the statistics of what floods could be expected between the existing and then a levee at the 18-foot contour. Now you are seeing a difference. Now you are seeing a rise by not quite a foot at the 10-year stage, as if the outlet structure was stayed the same and you built a 14-foot levee, or at the 14-foot contour, 50-year stage and the 100-year stage. So, the story that this slide is saying is that you will see a difference at the of the heights at the large floods if the rain levee is built at the smaller with a smaller footprint. Okay, so that's all I have. That's all I have for results. This is the last slide, and we'll field questions, and there may be questions on those results, and we can go back to that. So again, like I said, this is we were approached recently about carrying this further, refining what we did before to take a second look, looking at things that are becoming more of interest to folks, which I understand is even a discussion point for later today. One thing that we spoke about adjusting in the modeling going forward was having the model speak more clearly to what happens in the average conditions. What happens in those conditions that are happening more frequently. The model that we started with was built originally for a flood insurance study, which is aimed at big floods. So we want to adjust how we're modeling this to look at what's happening under the more frequent conditions. So the way that you heard me describing this is we had a single pool. That floodplain was one bucket of water that was used to simulate water surface elevations within there. What we're discussing about doing going forward is dividing that bucket of water up, right? So instead of having just one big pool where we're getting the water surface elevations in there, we want to divide that up at some level to speak more clearly about controls that are actually within the basin. So, for instance, I know that Gay Road cuts through the footprint there, maybe in like a 1/4, 3/4 size, and there are two culverts that go underneath there, and those culverts exhibit control on the water surface elevation. And those were not simulated in the work that we did previously. So, one thing that we could do to certainly divide the basin, to speak to that more accurate representation and more frequent events, would be to make sure that the Gay Road culverts are in there and their control is explicit. Another criteria that has been brought forward is understanding what are the changes to the velocity, the speed with which the water leaves and enters at the mouth there with the Puyallup River. When you make adjustments to the outlet gate and you modify how water can come in and out of the system, it has changes to that speed, to the velocity. And there are criteria that are established that the project would want to respect or ensure that they're meeting for fish standards to make sure that the velocities are in a realm that are advantageous for the fish. And so we would want to take a closer look at that outlet structure and make sure that we're speaking to how the changes are expected to happen there. And we talked about developing a different unit of measurement that is maybe more applicable to the agriculture community there when comparing alternative A to alternative B to alternative C. I speak a language that has to do with frequency events or, I don't know, velocity, magnitudes, and orientations. But that may mean nothing to those who are growing in the area. They want to understand more what, inundation times, or maybe there's time periods. Maybe January and February have greater importance or less importance than March and April, or whatever. But there are different ways to evaluate, different metrics to evaluate the alternatives that could be developed so that the difference in the results have more meaning to the community that's actually getting their boots dirty, and we can accommodate that. So, that's